Hello, my name is Bram Bennett, and today I will be giving a talk about Norfolk Marine Park. Norfolk Island is a tiny Australian landmass in the South Pacific Ocean, situated between New Caledonia and New Zealand, that has a population no greater than 2,000. The Norfolk Marine Park begins 1,400 kilometres offshore east of New South Wales. It covers up 188,444 square kilometres, with water depths from the high tide mark to 5,000 metres. It has a complex geomorphology and contains 13 seafloor features. The Norfolk Marine Park includes canyons, slopes, and seamounts that provide important seafloor habitat. Running through the marine park is the Norfolk Ridge, a long, narrow, steep-sided undersea ridge with seamounts and pinnacles. It adds as a line of oceanic stepping stones connecting deep-water marine species from New Zealand. The Norfolk Marine Park has biological communities associated with seamounts, including the Norfolk Ridge, and reef systems which support both tropical and temperate fish species, corals, and other marine organisms. This is due to the warm nutrient-poor waters from the eastern Australian current mixing with the cold nutrient-rich waters from the Antarctic. The Norfolk Marine Park also includes important habitat for seabirds and humpback whales. The marine park additionally contains several shipwrecks, with the most famous wreck being the HMS Sirius, one of the first fleet flagships, which has been submerged since 1790. Objectives. There are two objectives for Norfolk Marine Park. The first objective is to provide for the protection and conservation of biodiversity, other natural as well as cultural values of the Temperate East Marine Reserves network, Norfolk Island included. Objective 2 is to provide for ecologically sustainable use of the natural resources within the Temperate East Marine Reserves network, and it has to be consistent with Objective 1. Boundaries and zones. Norfolk Marine Park covers 188,444 kilometres squared area and extends to 1 kilometre under the ocean floor. The marine park contains these three zones. Marine National Park Zone, which allows for non-extractive activities such as tourism and recreation. Habitat Protection Zone, lets recreational activities, scientific research and tourism to take place. However, no activities which can damage the seafloor are allowed, such as benthic trawlers. And lastly, the Special Purpose Zone, which is immediately around the island itself. The Special Purpose Zone allows both conservational and sustainable use in an area highly valued by the Norfolk community. Zoning is based on the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act from 1999 and the World Conservation Union or IUCN categories of protection. The Regional Marine Reserve Network aimed to include some highly protected areas, which is IUCN categories 1 and 2. Zoning is based on the consideration of the threat that specific activity poses to the conservation objectives of each marine reserve. Zoning of marine reserves will seek to ensure that the conservation objectives of the area are protected, taking into account a precautionary approach to threats as well as the relative costs and benefits, including economic, social, and environmental, of different zoning arrangements. Enforcement. A number of Commonwealth agencies enter marine reserves for purposes relating to defence, border protection, law enforcement, and emergency response. These agencies include the Australian Defence Force, the Australian Customs and Border Protection Service, Australian Fisheries Management Authority, the National Offshore Petroleum Safety and Environmental Management Authority, and the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. There is no intention to limit training or operations for the Australian Defence Force, Customs and Border Protection Service law enforcement, or emergency response through the Marine Reserves network. Effective enforcement is supported through risk-based planning, incorporating targeted monitoring and surveillance, such as aerial and vessel-based surveillance, and the collection of intelligence from other sources. In this regard, strong links with Commonwealth and state enforcement agencies to share information and cooperate in joint enforcement activities are very important. The Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act sets out civil and criminal penalties for breaches. Administrative remedies, such as the issuing of infringement notices, may also be used in appropriate circumstances. Timeline. In 2012, the Norfolk Commonwealth Marine Reserve was created. In 2013, the Director of National Parks implements transitional management arrangements. In 2017, the draft management plans and maps were released. Later in 2017, the Norfolk Commonwealth Marine Reserve was renamed to Norfolk Marine Park. In 2018, a management plan for the temporary East Marine Parks network, which includes the Norfolk Marine Park, was released. Later in 2018, protection measures and a management plan were initiated. Designation of the Marine Protected Area. In 2012, the Norfolk Marine Park was created. Then, later in 2012, public comments and submissions were allowed. Over this 2-month period, 79,467 submissions in response to the Marine Protected Area were received. Changes from public comments were taken into consideration in 2012. And finally, the Norfolk Marine Park was updated with the change later in 2012. Stakeholders. Norfolk Marine Park has several stakeholders, including charter and game fishing companies, commercial fishermen, the Norfolk Island community itself, people who participate in recreational activities such as snorkeling, scuba diving, and fishing, and lastly the tourism industry, which includes cruise ship companies in addition to whale and bird watchers. Advisory groups. The Temperate East Marine Parks Advisory Committee promotes the involvement, engagement, and collaboration of marine park users, stakeholders, and the community in the management of the 8 marine parks in the region, including Norfolk Island Marine Park. The committee brings together a diverse range of knowledge and expertise across a range of topics relevant to marine park management, including tourism, fishing, marine transport, science, conservation, governance, communications, and engagement. Committee members work with Parks Australia's staff to shape the management of Australian marine parks, providing advice on marine issues at a regional level and strengthening our understanding of park user interests and issues. This collaborative approach to management is critical to achieving healthy, resilient, and well-managed marine parks that deliver benefits for all Australians. There is a minimum of 2 meetings per year with the committee members appointed for a 2-year term. The role of the advisory committee will be to support and collaborate with the director to manage marine parks. Lessons learned. Lessons learned from the Norfolk Marine Park are as follows. Inadequate protection, specifically inshore areas around Norfolk Island and Norfolk Island seamounts, and unprotected habitats, particularly the lack of correct zoning over seamount features. The regional panel noted submissions and representatives from the conservation sector calling for increased protection to seamounts. Changes were made to the Norfolk Marine Park by removing the multiple use zone, implementing a special use zone around Norfolk Island, and replacing the original multiple use zone with a habitat protection zone. Potential threats to the Norfolk Marine Park. Raised concerns in relation to the constitutional status of Norfolk Island and the potential implications for development and implementation of marine reserves in the vicinity of Norfolk Island. Norfolk was self-governed until 2016, then the Australian government took over. There is currently a lot of political unrest, and if the Australian government does pull out, there could be changes to the zoning around Norfolk Island and the marine park itself. Under the Commonwealth, mining is allowed in some marine park zones if there is permission granted by the Director of National Parks to proceed. In the case of Norfolk Marine Park, mining is potentially allowed in the multiple use zone. Climate change. Pressures relating to the effects of climate change and associated large-scale effects on the marine environment are unpredictable and may include shifts in major currents, rising sea levels, ocean acidification, and changes in the variability and extremes of climatic features such as sea temperatures. Traffic. Increased shipping traffic with increases in noise and also the possibility of collisions. Pollution. Wildlife interactions with plastics may cause entanglement, and also plastics could be introduced into the food chain. Another serious threat caused by pollution is the dumping of rubbish. For decades, Norfolk's Island official policy was to burn used cars and push them off a steep cliff into the marine park waters, as shown by the picture on the right. Unlike most mainland communities, there is no household bin collection service due to how remote Norfolk Island is. Additionally, because there is less than 2,000 residents, rubbish is expensive to remove and has to be exported back to mainland Australia or New Zealand, which is dependent on the weather as well as cost, whilst also being extremely dangerous. And lastly, here are my references. Thank you very much for watching and listening to my presentation about Norfolk Marine Park.